Thank you. It's a long time, a little less conversation, a little more action as well. I did ask to come on to the music, but the squares at RBS Legal told me I'd have to pay the estate of Elvis Presley. We do not have the budget today. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about an example of big data at RBS. So we're a bank. A lot of you guys in the audience will be from the UK, so you'll be familiar with us anyway. For those that aren't, we're one of the major kind of high street banks within the UK with about 50 million customers. And specifically within data and analytics, we've kind of set ourselves up for success in such a way that we think is a little bit unusual in the technology and analytics space, and that our data tech teams and our analysts and the people who use the information and the business that they sit with are all together in the same spot, which is fantastic. It allows us to do a lot more than we ordinarily would have been able to do if we were all kind of siloed in chunks. And big data is the type of technology emerging all the time, and I think it's really crucial that businesses get close to what's happening. So I do work for a bank, and we do have a little bit of a reputation for doing kind of boring slides, so I had to promise people that this is going to be engaging and not too dense with text or anything like that, so hopefully we'll be cool with that. Everyone see okay? Before you give me too much grief over that, I should point out that this is true. I did actually write this slide, not for today specifically. I wrote it about 4 years ago when I started working at RBS, and I work in the digital analytics team. So my job there was to communicate to the business through data. And the business's preferred way of us doing that at the time was this monstrosity. They insisted on it. Dan, we need commentary, we need to know. I built them a lovely dashboard, interactive. They could get access to whatever data they wanted, whenever they wanted. They said, that's great, Dan, but I communicate this all the way up to the CEO. This goes really high up the organization, and we need some commentary I need to put into an email. And I thought, okay, I'll do it. And it took ages, right? A really cumbersome way of getting information across. And I thought, nobody's reading this. I got really bored. So I started doing something with it to kind of test my theory. I thought, nobody can possibly be discerning what's going on from it. Can anybody notice anything unusual about it? How about now? There's some really top Trifacta swag for the first person to notice it. Anybody? Hands out, a few chuckles. Who's got it? Yeah? In the front row over there. What is it, sir? Michael Jackson, correct. Michael Jackson, the king of pop himself. I've done this speech a few times, and some of you have already seen it, and I did it with Beatles slides, and I think people thought I was making this up, because I say, oh, I did this for weeks and weeks, and I could do Strata every year for the next 50 years, and I'd have a different one of these slides. This is the bane of my life. Eventually, I stopped doing it and moved on into the big data team, but I like this example because it kind of refreshes my memory about two things. One is that kind of the nuggets of data sometimes are hidden in amongst a lot of other noise, and the way you structure that data is really, really important. And two is the presentation of that data to the end user is crucial. And that was the inspiration for some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. Now, we're a bank. We have lots of different ways in which we like to interact with our customers. Every time a new kind of channel gets invented, we build that channel. And we have lovely data scientists like this chap here, Spiros, I think is in the room over there. Hello, Spiros. And they interview people who use these channels, and they use the data that gets created in silos. That's great. We know how the customers are using the websites. We know how customers are using mobile. I have a great idea of what's going on in the bank, of course. Except do we? Because do customers really do that, or do they really do something a bit more like this? Browse online, then go into the branch, ring up, then maybe use a web chat. Poor old Spiros, he's got no chat. The anguish on that man's face. This is genuine. This is a pain which he feels. In fact, I was thinking about getting that whale face guy from this morning to see if he can discern the true level of emotion Spiros is feeling at this point. So this is no good. We've got data everywhere. We had to fix this. We had to get everything together so that we get a single view of how our customers are behaving. And the solution to that, you won't be surprised to hear, is big data, hurrah, comes in and saves the day. It's not quite been as simple as that. There's a lot of complexity to it. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about one of the candidates that we had for a big data use case within financial services that we were really excited about. It was a really obvious one for us. And we're also going to talk a little bit about how Trifacta helped us to achieve what we've achieved in that space. So web chat is the example I'm going to talk about. It's a great example because it kind of, if you think about the classic 3 V's of big data, volume, velocity, variety, we've got all of that, okay? Web chat's our fastest growing channel. We're getting about 250,000 chats per month on average and rising all the time. That data's coming in all the time, and the faster we can react to it, the better we are able to serve our customers. And probably most crucially, it's the variety, it's that structure of that data is really complex. If you've ever seen it, if you've ever seen what a web chat log file looks like, it's complicated and messy, and it's really kind of difficult to see what was going on. So historically, we've kind of always had a problem with analyzing web chats. So of those 250,000 chats that we're getting, they're spread out among sort of 300 or so frontline agents, each of which, there are teams that are run by about, kind of 10 agents per web chat team lead. So you've got 30 or so web chat team leads. How many of those 250,000 do you think we analyzed on average previously to big data? Was anybody going to be brave enough to suggest a guess? Yeah. 0. Yeah, you're pretty close. We were actually infinity times better than 0. We got 200. So, a whopping 0.08%, I think, something like that. That's no good, right? We've got this hugely important channel. Our customers are communicating to us, and we listen and we type back, but what happens after that? What do we do with that information? Well, very, very little. Right? If you think about it, if you've only got 200 web chats being analyzed, then these are being manually read through. How are we supposed to know what's going on? If you think about one of those web chat agents, so they're getting coached every week, are you talking to the customer in the right way? Do you know how to open a direct debit? When they're getting coached, their line manager is having to trawl through all of this manual stuff and dig it out physically and read it. It's massively inefficient. And until now, we didn't really have a way of rationalizing those big data, those web chats files, because they were unstructured and there's no way to do it. So that's why we turned to Trifacta to try and help us with some of that. So Connor's going to talk a little bit now about how we use Trifacta to wrangle unstructured data.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. So before we get into a bit about how RBS has used Trifacta to get some value out of their unstructured web chat data, I want to share a quick statistic from Forrester Research. On average, organizations only use 28% of their semi-structured data and 31% of their unstructured data. So this is really similar to what RBS was seeing. And fundamentally, the reason this data isn't being used is because it looks like this. It's really messy, it's unstructured, it's not tabular. And if you think of the type of people who want to be analyzing data, data analysts, data scientists, the tools that they're used to using can't handle data that comes in looking like this. Just for kicks, we dumped that data into Excel. You can see it is still a complete disaster in Excel. You can imagine the manual munging you'd have to do to get this in Excel into a shape that you need. Not fun, not something anybody wants to deal with. We also dumped it into Tableau just to get a peek at how it would look in a slightly more, visual analytics tool. And Excel, or Tableau, does a slightly better job of parsing it out, but you can see because it is semi-structured data, it's breaking these fields down in the wrong way. So when you're dealing with big data, particularly the variety section of big data, semi-structured, unstructured data, you can see that it really throws a wrench into what is your traditional analytics process. So this probably looks familiar to a lot of you in the room. It's been the analytics process for the last few decades. You have an analyst who comes up with a question. They then attempt to analyze data, usually data that's been stored in the enterprise data warehouse. So it's already structured, it's already clean, it conforms to some known schema. And they then take that data, put it into their downstream BI, reporting tools, and come up with some sort of insights. So straight line process. However, big data, if you think of the unstructured web chat log that we showed a slide ago, that really doesn't fit into this process. And so that's where you need something new in order to allow your business analysts to very easily unlock the value in that data and make it structured and ultimately be able to work with that. So that's where what we call data wrangling comes in. Fundamentally, data wrangling is all about taking that raw data, that semi-structured, unstructured data that you're landing in your Hadoop data lake, massaging it very easily, very visually and interactively, and ultimately making it able to be analyzed. And the crucial part of data wrangling for Trifacta and for RBS is that this needs to be done by someone who doesn't have technical skills. So you don't need to be a hardcore Python coder. You don't need to know MapReduce or Pig or Spark in order to do the data wrangling. It's putting the unstructured data in the hands of the person who wants to do that analytics. And so that's where Trifacta comes in at RBS. So quick architecture slide. This is the logical architecture as Trifacta interprets it at RBS. So you can see on the right, on the right side of the screen, we've got the data sources that are coming in. So it's a combination of the newfangled interaction data, web chat, any social data, as well as the traditional transactional data sources that are being offloaded from the enterprise data warehouse. These are then ingested into the cluster. RBS has stood up at least 3 zones, raw data zone, discovery zone, shared zone. Each of these is where that exploration is happening. And that's where Trifacta sits. So the analyst can use Trifacta to access the raw data, so that actual unstructured web chat data, do a little bit of structuring, some cleansing. They might choose to land it in the discovery zone so other team members can begin working with it and reusing it. Or if that data is now ready to be used downstream for business operations, things like reporting, analytics, they can land that into the shared zone. So fairly typical Hadoop architecture here. We're going to give you a quick demo of how Trifacta works with the web chat data at RBS. 4 things that you could be paying attention to during the demo. These are really the 4 key aspects of Trifacta that enabled RBS to very easily work with the web chat data and get quite a bit of value from it. So those 4 items are inline profiling. So as you're working with the data, you're able to instantly see the quality of the data if there's any values missing. Sampling and scalability. You can imagine big data, you've got terabytes in your lake. You don't want to be interactively trying to analyze a terabyte of data. It's going to just crush your cluster. And so Trifacta uses a sample to scale approach where you work on a random sample of your data and then run the job at scale and can view the results. So speeds up iterations, makes it very interactive and speedy. Transformation previews and transformation suggestions. These are fundamentally what allows someone who's non-technical to work with unstructured data. And we'll see a bit of that in a moment. So I'm going to pop over to the laptop. One quick caveat about this demo. It is fake data. And beyond being fake data, it's actually, it was pointed out to me that the IP addresses are US, not UK. But the structure of this data is the same as what we saw at RBS. So even though the values in the data are not correct, the actions that we're taking as we move through this demo are similar to what RBS was doing. So this is the Trifacta interface. What I did before coming to the podium was load the raw web chat file into this tool. So when I loaded the file initially, Trifacta performed one transformation right off the bat, which is just breaking this into rows for me. Everything in the Trifacta interface is interactive. And so if I just very quickly highlight one of these values in the data, you can see at the bottom, these are the transformation suggestions. So based on what I highlighted, the tool infers for me what it thinks I want to do, and I can then immediately see the impact of that step on the data itself. So you see if I click the card that says delete from highlighting this header row, the header row turns red. And if I want to validate that this isn't removing any real data from the data set, I can filter down and see only the 14 rows that are being removed. When this looks right, I can click Add to Script. And you can see on the right here, I'm producing a lineage of all of my script steps. So I can go back and see what I've done or edit my steps. So I'm getting a bit closer to something structured. I still do have this mess of kind of semi-structured key value pairs. So with Trifacta, again, it's super easy to isolate these key value pairs and turn them into columns. I'm just going to select a couple of the keys, what I want to turn into columns ultimately. And you can see that the first suggestion that Trifacta gives me is something called extract KV. I can look at the preview in the grid to see what this will do. And if you're at all familiar with JSON structures, you can see this is turning it into a map. The neat thing, the power of maps when you're working with data in Trifacta is that they can really quickly be exploded into columns. So if I add this to the script and simply click on the column that I've created, what I get are now 5 columns, each containing the value from that unstructured data. So I'm a lot closer now. That was super fast. I took this mess and have started to tabularize it. I can go a bit farther. Let's say this URL has some parameters in it. If I expand it out a bit, I can see I've got this question parameter. Maybe when someone was entering the web chat, they had a quick survey that said, what topic are you interested in discussing? And they clicked that. So I can highlight the question. Oops. Sorry, I can highlight question, not question. There we go. And again, the first suggestion is something called extract. So it's identifying that URL parameter and pulling the answer into a new column for me. So you can see I haven't done anything coding related at all. All of my transformations have been mediated by the tool itself. So this is something that if you're not a technical analyst, it suddenly makes the unstructured data in Hadoop much more accessible and much easier to work with. So one other element in this data that is of value is the timestamps. So I'm going to break off some of this metadata about geographical information, longitude, latitude, IP address, and just isolate in the new column the text of the chat and the timestamps for each interaction. So that's this split transform. I don't actually want the metadata, so I can just drop that. Again, very fast. One of the cool things about Trifacta is as I make selections, I'm actually training the tool to recognize patterns. So if I look at this, one of these chat text, again, it's fake text, lorem ipsum, you can see there's multiple timestamps embedded in this chunk of data. I can just highlight a couple of these timestamps, and if you watch the suggestions at the bottom, you can see that Trifacta has taught itself the pattern that represents a timestamp in this data. So 2 digits, 4 digits, etc. And if I look at what that's doing, it'll actually extract those values into new columns. If I wanted, because of course web chats could be any length, I could choose a transform called extract list, which will pull all of the timestamps from that column and put them into a new record. Let's see. I can now, part of the web chat analysis would be how long a customer has to wait before they get an agent on the line. And so I've got this list of timestamps. What I did a moment ago was just click the timestamp column, and you can see this first suggestion will pluck the first and the last timestamp out of the column. So this will give me the complete length of the chat. And then simply to calculate the difference between those two timestamps, again, I click the column names, choose one of the suggestions, and what I get, if I expose the underlying code, you can see I'm calculating the difference between those two dates in seconds. I could call this wait time. One final step. Now that I've calculated wait time, I want to go in and just drop the columns I don't need. So there's, let's see, column 1, column 2, extract list, and just quickly drop them all. So I think that's been, 5-7 minutes? And I've taken that original semi-structured source file and I've turned it into something that is both tabular and has some interesting new derived values, including wait time, question, and the additional key value pairs. So super fast, super easy, and we're going to turn it back over to Dan now so he can talk about some of the the real value, the real business value that RBS started to see from this process.
Thanks, Connor. If you want to get the slides back up.
Oh, I have to get the slides back
If
up.
you could, please.
Yes.
I think it's a great example. I mean, Connor did that in 5 or 6 minutes. I've done it. I've had to play around with it. So I can also do it in 5, and I'm an idiot. The two things that are really kind of powerful for us within RBS about that is, one, just the ability to use that data. We've been tripping over gold bars, as one of my bosses like to call it. All this powerful data. Customers are actually physically telling us what's going on, and we haven't been able to use that. So it's unbelievably powerful for us as a bank to really understand what our customers are telling us and then use that in other channels. And the second, probably most important thing of all, is just for us as a business, the way that we're able to proliferate that kind of capability throughout the wider analytical community because it's so simple to use. So our analytics team is about 300 strong just for personal banking. It gets to about 1,000 strong when you start talking about the rest of the bank. We could have, and we do have, smart guys who could do pig and hive and all of this stuff, but we want to be fast, we want to be agile, we want to be able to do, if someone gets an idea about how to help a customer, we don't want there to be technological blockers in the way. So Trifacta is really crucial for us in that. And I think it's worth kind of closing off the story with some of the cool things that we can do and what difference it makes that we can do this now. So once we've got that data wrangled and into our big data environment, we can do some crucial things with it. So text mining is an obvious one, right? We've got the web chats, what are customers actually talking to us about. If you're coaching these frontline agents whose job it is, and they do a fantastic job to talk to customers, how do you know if somebody's doing a great job at telling customers about our mobile app, but perhaps not doing such a great job at helping them open an account? By text mining and categorizing those chats into certain types, we can give really targeted coaching to those people so they understand what are the things they're good at, what are the things they're not so good at and need a bit of help with. Probably my favorite of all is the stuff that we do with the sentiment analysis. And to understand why this is so important, you need to think this is a human problem we have here. This is a human issue that we're working on. Those web chat agents, they work incredibly hard, and one of the key ways really that they get kind of rated or assessed within work is the survey feedback that you get. So if you've ever filled in a web chat online, chances are you've had a survey at the end of it that says, how did you rate this chat? Was this good? Was it bad? 0 to 10. Standard NPS question. Within RBS, that happens too. But what can happen is, let me paint a picture. Somebody goes online, tries to do something that they can't do online. They can only do in a branch. So they have a chat with the agent, and the agent says, yeah, I'm really sorry about that, Mr. Smith, but this functionality you'll need to go into branch. I can see that your nearest branch is this place. And the guy says, oh, okay, I understand what they're at. It's like, oh, the opening hours are 9 o'clock. I can actually see there's a clear appointment there on Monday at 9. Would you like me to book that for you? I can see that the quickest route for you to get there is this, this, and this. And the guy says, oh, well, yeah, that would be fantastic. You've been really helpful. Thanks. Close the chat. How satisfied were you with this? 0. Dissatisfied. I came on to do an action. I can't do it. Think about how that member of staff feels about being assessed as having done a poor performance there because the customer sentiment was negative from the raw materials of the survey. By being able to actually look into the context of those chats and what's actually going on within the chat itself, we can use sentiment analysis to try and really get to grips with it and understand whether our agents are doing a good job or a bad job. And more often than not, we find a little conflict there between the survey responses, and that helps us to be much fairer and more accurate in the way that we're assessing agent performance. And it's just made it so much easier for our frontline leads. So you remember, again, you've got a web chat lead, team lead has got a team of about 20 to 30 people. Previously, they would have had to go through everything manually, so people were getting assessed on sort of 1% of what they'd done, which is preposterous. Imagine you were getting, some of you might like to be assessed on 1% of what you're doing, I don't know, but it sounds like an unfair deal for these guys. So now by accumulating all this stuff together, you can very quickly go in, find out what the agent's been doing, but compare how they were doing with last week really, really quickly. Touch of a button. What are the topics that are going well? This is a SaaS VA overlay that we have, visualization that goes out to the frontline dashboards. If you find that an agent is showing perhaps less performance than you would like on the mobile app, rather than never knowing that because that wasn't the 1% of chats you were looking at, you can track it really clearly, and then you can have a really great targeted coaching conversation with that member of staff so that they know the next time they need to talk about it, what went well, what didn't go well. We can drill down into those actual chats that were categorized as mobile app and maybe lower sentiment. So you can look at that and say, perhaps you should have done this. And that's powerful, okay? You're able to coach based on stuff that you could have done better. I think what's most powerful of all is that the positive feedback loop you get when you compare it to somebody who's done it really well. So instead of just saying, well, this is a tool for kind of improving poor performance, actually what it's a tool for is reinforcing good performance. There are loads and loads of web chat agents who would have had that mobile app conversation and done it brilliantly. So now when you're coaching somebody, you can point to these examples of really good, you can get them at the touch of a fingertip, go straight in and say, right, show me chats about the mobile app where the sentiment was high, and you can see that, and you say, yes, I understand, I could have said this, or I didn't know about that feature, I can see why the customer's happy about it. So all of this stuff is obvious, but we weren't able to do it because we couldn't wrangle the data, so it's made a huge difference to us, and it makes a big difference to our frontline staff, and in turn the service that they give to our customers, which is the main thing. We get some other nice stuff out of it too, of course. It's not just about the front line. Because it's in our big data environment, we're able to tie it to other bits of data that we hold. We're a bank, we've got lots and lots of data on our customers. So we can see all kinds of other kind of analytical things about what's happening with platform adoption, what's happening with regards to our uptake of certain products. This is just a very simple example. We never would have been able to do this before. We overlaid it into a kind of geographic view, so you can see, and we saw instantly that we were having far more chats in the rest of the world than we thought we were. And that throws up new things. Well, the ability to visualize information like this throws up new opportunities for us. For example, we noticed that the sentiment tended to be a lot lower in the kind of right half, that's poor geography, isn't it? The eastern half there. In places like Australia, the sentiment was much lower. Are there any Australians in the crowd before I insult you? There is, right? Yeah. Okay, so we thought, well, maybe Australians are grumpy. You're not grumpy, are you? Very big smile there. Of course, that's not true. The Australians aren't grumpy. They're a happy-go-lucky bunch. What it is, of course, is that a lot of the services that customers were coming online to do aren't available for a small period of downtime between sort of 1 and 2 in the morning in the UK market while there's some maintenance going on. And they're much more likely to hit that if you're in Australia, because obviously we've got we had a UK-focused view of the world and our customers, and we actually found that there's a heck of a lot more going on with expats in Australia or people on holiday. You're getting prevalence of people getting their card blocked much more quickly. So by being able to see all this and tie it together through web chat, which was our customers telling us what was going on, we're able to make changes to our operations, the way the bank functions effectively. So it's not just about the web chat channel, it's also about how the bank itself sets itself up properly to treat those customers. We also noticed kind of weird events, like we get a lot of stuff from Panama lately, which I see our lawyers have kind of put a speech bubble over to try and protect. So I'm sure it's all absolutely above board. I think the thing that I like most, and the reason why I like getting up on stage and talking about this stuff most of all, is because as a bank, we're in the new. We're there to make money, of course. But RBS in particular, our mission is to do things for our customers. And when we got our big data environment, and when we got a tool in like Trifacta, there's so many things we could have gone after. I think it was really telling that the very first thing we did was to make things better for our front line. We thought, how can we help them? They're the people who are actually serving our customers. Let's think about a way we can use data to make a difference to our staff and make a difference to our customers. And this is just one example. So there's a chap in India that actually heads up a big web chat operation of 200 or 300 people out there. And our guys in India spend a lot of time with him, liaising with. Historically, we would have been kind of siloed big data team in a corner, somebody doing some complicated data science and then producing a report and sending out and hoping something happened with it. Instead, our guys actually sit down with the front line. We were taking them through this process, saying, what would be helpful for you? What do you need? And they were fantastic. Nobody's ever asked us that before. And they were sitting down, they were changing. They effectively kind of authored the dashboard and told us what would be useful, what wouldn't be. So it's really a really telling example of how big data can be really powerful in ways that you probably hadn't expected. So I thought it would be nice to end with an example of what we've been able to do off the back of this and how we've seen satisfaction go up through web chats. This is an example of a nice one, an extremely satisfied customer off the back of a lot of coaching. Of course, it's not. It's another bit of nonsense to finish this off. Can anybody see what's going on this time? How about now? There's some great swag in it for anybody who's brave enough to... No? Nobody? Elvis, you, sir. You have a Trifacta t-shirt coming your way. Sorry, Connor, I didn't tell you that.
No, that's fine.
We have plenty. That's enough nonsense from us. I think we'll be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Yeah.
or not.
I didn't realize we were that clear and covered everything.
Obviously,
apparently.
says it all. No questions for myself or for question for you, sir?
Maybe one question, but not on the case you displayed, but in general. So Trifacta as a platform, for how many use cases or how many types of data are you using it actively?
Well, so that's a question for both of us, I guess. So for us as RBS as a customer, the main one we went after was web chat in the first instance. We have a lot of other things that we know we will be able to do with very similar things. So one of the things that I'm most kind of excited about is voice-to-text stuff that we're looking at, because I can apply a lot of the work that's been done on this already through wrangling voice data. So first of all, we need to get some translation software in place, so we're looking at that. But that's another massively powerful source of information about what the customer's thinking about that we've never been able to use before, that Trifacta will allow us to do. So once we've done the voice translation, we'll have this big unstructured wad of text. And if you think about the importance of that channel to us, web chat's 250,000 chats per month. Telephony is over 20 million calls per year, and I think rising as well. So there's a huge amount of information we can do in that. That's one. There's a lot of other stuff within digital, within the social space, anything basically where there's unstructured, and there's so much unstructured data in the bank. Lots of stuff to come there. I don't know if you've got any examples from other clients.
Yeah, so sort of from the Trifacta side of things, we've seen about 4 general buckets of use cases from a functional perspective. So RBS falls into one of my favorite categories, which is something we call new analytics. So it's analyzing data that hasn't previously been able to be analyzed. One of the other really popular use cases we've seen is something that we call standard reporting. So typically, a lot of customers tend to have problems analyzing large amounts of data at scale. They've been trying to do that in tools like Excel, which if you've used Excel to do that type of analysis, you know that it starts really running slow when you get to about 1 million rows. And so that type of shift, moving the standard reporting analytics over to Hadoop and enabling that prep with Trifacta is another kind of key use case we've seen.
Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, in the back.
Yes, sir.
How long does it take your team to get operational?
How long did it take our team to get operational in Trifacta? Well, Connor, you were involved in the process.
I was. Yeah, it took. I guess it was very quick. So the actual wrangling piece was a few weeks. We then optimized it a bit. So I'd say from end to end, it was a matter of 1 to 2 months, I'd say, with a little bit of delay because of building out the Hadoop infrastructure, putting it into production, scheduling the job. But the actual wrangling of the data, honestly, we got 80% done in about 8 hours.
Unbelievable. The problems that we have, or the bottlenecks within a big organization like ours, are always the kind of governance and the IT infrastructure things that we have to go through. But that's why we've invested in Trifacta, effectively, to allow us to be able to do things much more quickly without the need for all of that stuff. So, as Connor says, she's not exaggerating. I picked up Trifacta for a few demos that I've done to showcase internally what we've been doing. I've done much the same demo, and I learned it in about 10 minutes. The guys really, really quickly pick it up. Yeah.
Yeah, so the script in the UI can be exported into a command line interface, and then that command line interface can be scheduled. We've scheduled things with Uzi. I'm not entirely sure what we're doing at RBS, but it's very easy to plug into your regular enterprise scheduler, so you can run it sort of on a recurring basis on incoming new data feeds.
Sure. Question in the back there, sir? The dashboard. So the question is, what was the dashboard? Yeah, that particular dashboard was built on the SaaS VA platform, so not Trifacta at all. So Trifacta, in this instance, is just providing us with the data. We then combine that with lots of other data that we have, like the agent hierarchy, so we know who's in whose team, etc. And then, in this instance, we're using the SaaS VA platform for the graphical demonstration. Any other questions? Yes, sir?
So you're saying it was much easier to use Trifacta than to change the log file format to something easier to parse?
Indeed, yes. Impossible to change the log file format, in fact, because as a bank, we're using a third-party system, like closed-down system for our web chat. The log files are the log files. It would be fantastic if they changed their model just for us, but unfortunately we didn't quite have that clout. And there are lots of other kind of systems like that where we use some kind of enterprise software from a third-party vendor, and the data you get is the data you get. We then have to, and even if it did come out in some standardized format, we'd still have to do weird things to it to get it to work with the vast, complicated RBS infrastructure. So the ability for us to be able to transform it in whatever way we want is always going to be crucial, I think. All good? All keen to get to lunch? Okay, thanks very much, guys.
Yeah, thanks everyone.